Liverpool, a city worth fighting for. The most bombed city outside of London during World War II. So where are we now? A city full of history and inspiration. It's home to the Beatles, football, and its maritime history. Hi and welcome. In today's show, we'll be looking at the effects of World War II on the city of Liverpool. In particular, we'll be talking to brother and sister Bill and Teresa, heading on down to a local community centre and speaking with history professor Roger Spalding to understand more about evacuation and wartime Liverpool.
They even predicted the number of people per ton of bombs, so they were expecting 60 people for every ton of bomb dropped to be killed. So they were expecting devastation, and they were expecting that devastation to be aimed specifically at civilians in urban centres, the larger urban centres. So the feeling was that all non-essential personnel, which included children and initially the mothers of very young children, should be got out of the city.
The 1st of September 1939, a date no one would forget. The day Germany invaded Poland. Within a couple of days, Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain announced to the world that the UK was at war with Germany.
A lot of people lost a lot of families, a lot of people. We lost people in the Kondowe shelter, relatives of mine, relatives of my father's really, you know. We hardly knew them, but I, as a child, I didn't know them, but we were, we were told about them, the 3 coffins in the one house. Yeah, we were told about them.
My sister took me, and I was the youngest in the family. My next to eldest brother, Billy, he was with us. He was 8. And we didn't actually cross the threshold of school. We just got straight onto the buses. We got off the bus in Southport, and we were walking side by side, me holding his hand, and people were coming out of their homes to decide which child they would take in for their evacuation.
I was evacuated on the 1st of September 1939. I was 13 years of age, and she's
I was 4.5, nearly 5. You know, so.
Do you remember?
Yes, I do remember. Yeah.
I remember. Both Teresa and I were evacuated, but at different times.
Yeah.
And under vastly different circumstances. But it was a well-ordered and well-organised evacuation, because the authorities had it in mind that perhaps all of the big cities would be saturated bombed.
Yeah.
So they wanted to get the children away before the war started. So the evacuation of schools started on the 1st of September. And in Liverpool, most of us went from Lime Street and Exchange Street station.
Yeah.
My memory of it was kind of like scary, but in a funny way. My life had sort of been without a mum. She died when I was 2 from natural causes. My father went away to sea, so I was like alive to anything, thinking I was going to school. Didn't know the difference between going to school and going to Southport as an evacuee, because obviously it wasn't even a name in them days for me. It was just, you go and do this, do that, and you did it. And I was lucky, because a nice grey-haired old lady came along and selected myself as being somebody that she would like to take care of, and she was told if she wanted to take me, she would have to take my older brother, Billy, which she accepted that.
So let's find out what the people of Liverpool really know about World War II.
1939. I'm gonna guess, is it 1940 something?
Me now.
I do. My boyfriend's father was evacuated actually, and as a child he ended up staying in Wales and he absolutely loved it.
No. 1941, as a guess.
1940.
Haven't got a clue.
40 or 41?
No.
Come on!
So almost.
41. So very good guess. Like 1941. So
Oh.
very good guess.
There you go.
The first place we went to, well, that was, as I say, it was emergency, so we all got just sent there, and there wasn't enough places for us to go, and we ended up in this house, a farm. It was farm cottage, farm labourer's cottage, and they only had 2 bedrooms, and they had a child, you know, so they just took us in out of sympathy, I think, you know. But we were there for about 10 days.
You don't remember much about that then?
I don't, except I was very unhappy there because they seemed to be very old and didn't know how to treat us, you know. And all I did was cry and cry and cry and grab hold of my brother. And so when he went to school, I would sit in the corner until he came home again because I was in school. Anyway, and eventually a car came along and I went with my little bags and ended up in where I was for 4 years, you know, so for at least 4 years. And I remember it was lovely. It was November, and no, it couldn't be in November because it must have been January, must have by then. It was just after Christmas anyway. And so she met me at the door, and I thought she was beautiful. She must have been about 20. She was newly married, you know. And she got hold of my hand and brought me in, and she just treated me so nice. Gave me a little chair to sit on. I said I could keep up for my chair, you know. And had talked to me about anything and everything. And gave me some afternoon tea, you know. She had a maid, so they brought the tea on a little trolley, you know. So no, I was really happy there.
But the adults tried to keep as much as they could away from children, you know, and the sadness of it. But I just hope and pray there'll never be another one. And then on the other hand, there's war going on all the time, everywhere and somewhere. Everywhere there's sadness. Why? Because us humans are so human. Oh, what would you call it? If it didn't make you laugh, you'd cry. If you really knew or saw some of the things that I have seen, and I'm only 88, and I've lived a good life. I've enjoyed my life. I've got no regrets, because I say, que sera, what's going to be will be. Wherever you are, whatever you do, whatever's going to be will be. That's all.
And I always remember the location of it was right next to a railway line. And that was kind of like a train journey home, if ever we were able to get on the train. But of course, the boardings were far too high. But then we got to like it. She was kind of, she gave me something that I never really had up to that age, which was like strictly bedtime, 6 o'clock, a cup of milk and a biscuit before you went to bed. I mean, I just never had that kind of treatment, but I remember it very fondly.
Did it feel like it was just a trip?
It felt to us a bit exciting. Some of us hadn't travelled on a long distance train before, and but to the mothers, no, not a bit.
When did it sink in though that you were not going to see your mum or dad for a while?
When the train started off. the docks
Yeah.
and on the warehouses round the docks. Well, our houses were in among the warehouses,
Yeah.
so some of them got hit badly. But my mother,
There's crater in it, wasn't
yeah,
it?
my mother suddenly decided, this is too bad. I don't want the children here. And my two sisters were already evacuated, but she said, well, Teresa and Pat would have to go.
So
There was an emergency then. We all went away.
where's to think that, isn't it?
And
Yeah.
we were sitting
I was small
talking.
from the age when I went away. I was 12 from the age when I came.
And this little girl come walking through. There was quite a few came through. So she said, she's not here. Getting worried, you know, she's not here. They haven't lost her, have they? And I saw different, because I remember they were lovely curly hair.
Yeah.
Very blonde, weren't you, when you were small? And I said, is that? No, that's not her. And eventually this little girl with big, like National Health Service glasses, pads on her nose, came walking through. We just ignored
Short
her.
hair here.
And her hair was short. And we just ignored her. And I said,
You didn't want me.
I said to Stacey, that must be her, because I don't think there's anyone left. Everyone had refused to take her. And I said, that must be her.
And go with their mothers, and they often went on very long, difficult train journeys where there were a large number of children crammed together, and many of the children when they arrived were suffering from fleas and lice and a whole range of complaints that had spread in the crowded conditions of the train compartments. You're also dealing in some cases with a large minority of the children who had never left home and never been to the city. So it was simply traumatic leaving because it was beyond their experience. And certainly to go into the countryside was, for many of them, an entirely different world that they'd never actually experienced before.
There was an evacuation society, Grimley on the Hill. I don't know. I don't really know where it is actually, but I get a journal of them, one every 2 months.
I was with a good family. It was a local school teacher. But my mother and father found, because I was an only child, I was 10 when the war started. And because it was expensive for my mum and dad, and my mother used to send me 1/6 a week pocket money to cover stamps to write in, and of course I spent it on sweets. My mother found it was expensive, so she brought me home, and the schools were all closed at the commencement of the war. And what they did then, authorities organised what they call house teaching. So whatever class you're in, your teachers were there. They organised teachers that you went to houses, and you had lessons so many times a week. Did that. But I just did it. We used to go in the air raid shelters under Tybarn Street and all over the different places.
Do you think it was beneficial to how we are today that happened, that people from urban areas actually got to experience a different lifestyle?
It was. I mean, it's beneficial in an immediate sense in that some of those children were much better fed. And they were better fed because in the countryside there were many more unofficial, unrationed sources of food. There were vegetables, there were fruits, there was fresh milk, there were more eggs. There were things like rabbits, which were very, very plentiful at the time, so they ate very well. And on one or two occasions, parents didn't actually recognise their children after a fairly short space of time because they'd grown so much. So it's beneficial on that level. It's beneficial in another level too, in that it did cause a great deal of mixing between the social classes. Shocking for some middle class homes who took in evacuees to actually discover the conditions that people have been living in. So I think routinely, for example, and this was contained in a report by the Women's Institute of a child from a Glasgow tenement who urinated on the carpet. And of course, in those days, carpets weren't fitted; they tended to be squares with polished wood around the outside. And the mother said to the child, "Oh, you naughty thing! Look what you've done. Why didn't you go in the corner like you do at home?" So, reflecting the fact that in the Glasgow tenements, where a large number of people often shared one toilet, that it was common practice to urinate on the floor in the flat. But there were other cases where children were discovered to be sewn into their clothes. This was September when evacuation took place. They were sewn into their clothes for the winter. And when the stitches were cut open to take off their clothes, underneath that, it was discovered that they were wrapped in brown paper, and underneath the brown paper they were coated in goose fat, and that was a preparation for the winter. Now that was only a minority, but it was a significant minority, and it shocked those middle class homes that these people went into, unable to use knives and forks, not properly toilet trained, wearing these kind of clothes, unfamiliar with the idea of an indoor toilet or a bath or washing facilities of that kind. And even the Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, said after the publication of that Women's Institute report that he was shocked to discover that so many of his countrymen were living in conditions like that. So it did reveal, if you like, this process of evacuation, the conditions of what we might call the submerged tenth of the population to the middle classes, who in the normal course of their lives simply wouldn't have come across them.
We've heard the emotional stories of locals who were affected by wartime Liverpool, but also how the city and its people survived and came out stronger. Join us next week when we'll be looking at how the emigration of the Irish impacted the city in the Irish invasion. See you then.
Roaming in the gloaming on the bonny banks of Clyde, roaming in the gloaming with my lassie by my side. When the sun has gone to rest, that's the time that I like best. Roaming, roaming, roaming in the gloaming.